R10 with Jordan. Is this mic on? The mic is live. Alright, we are ready to go. Foodie talk. Alright. On the radio, let's stop footing. Yes, this is AI. Keen to get started. Pump those ratings up high. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host Jordan Faso, and we're back after round 10 of the footy. We've got on the episode today, guys. We've got power rankings as per usual, a bit more of a detailed version of those. Going to go through a rant time with Jordan as well, just about the AFL's handling of the Willie Rioli situation. I think like with the more details that have come out over the last week or so, I guess it's just been, I think, one of the, considering how small this story was and how badly handled it was, I think that it's been sort of underreported or under-discussed. So I'm just going to give my 2 cents there and my general rant on that whole situation, and then closing it out with the footy again, and we're going to go back and give the Secret Star Society inductee for round 10. So with that being said, let's get underway. I'm going to start with the rant today actually as well, because I just want to get it out of the way and then we can focus on all the footy stuff, which, this is sort of on-field, off-field, the Willie Rioli situation, and, I'm a little bit late to this. The dust has settled now, but the whole situation was just, very weird, and first and foremost, off the top, hope Willie Rioli's doing alright. He seems like he's, going through a few issues right now, which is, no one wants to see anyone go through that sort of stuff, and, I definitely sympathise with whatever he has to deal with at the moment, and, this my rant is not even about Willie Rioli and, what he's alleged to have done with that text and some of the other events over the last few years. They are what they are. It's not that big of a deal in my opinion. He got suspended for it, but that's part of the issue is, I don't know whether he was, appropriate, if he should have been suspended for it anyway. So, we all know that he sent that message apparently, and, if true, is something pretty intense and deserving of a one-match suspension, if not more, if that's all that happened. But that's not the whole story here, and I feel like it's, as I said off the top, it's been under-discussed, and we had the reporting come out saying that Rioli didn't claim that he was subjected to racism, but David KOCH, the president, said that the 29-year-old had been provoked to send the threatening messages to Bailey Dale, of course. So KOCH's quote exactly was, if you like, cultural disrespect during the game, referring to where he'd come from, community habits and things like that. So that's directly from David KOCH. And then the Bulldogs coach, Luke Beveridge, replied with, I can tell you as a matter of fact that these comments weren't culturally insensitive. It surprises me that he, alluding to David KOCH, would insinuate or accuse our players of going down that track. So I just don't know how this whole situation has been under the rug. We have Koshi absolutely accusing the Bulldogs players of being racist to Willie Rioli, which is a huge story in itself, right, if true. And then, fair enough, if not true, then Bevo is defending his players, which he seems to think that is absolutely not the case. So again, how has this been swept under the rug? It's very weird to me. We have no clue where this truth lies, and I think it's pretty important to know where that truth lies, because racism has been a big issue in the AFL for a long time now, and it's still rearing its ugly head. Unfortunately, you'd hope we've moved past all this, but it hasn't. It still exists, of course it does, and this is another example of I don't know, the mishandling of things by the AFL, and because in this situation, let's go down both paths, right? We've got if we believe Bevo, then we have Koshi blindly defending his player and wrongly accusing the Western Bulldogs players of racist, which honestly you could claim is defamation if true. That's a pretty strong accusation, and without any actual evidence, which we don't have because the AFL didn't investigate it, that is something that he should not be just throwing around out there. And Bevo, in that same vein, has the absolute right to defend his players, and probably more so than he did even. And I think Kosh should have been sanctioned for these comments if they were in fact untrue, right? But then what's worse is if we believe what Koshi has said, and that the Bulldogs players have in fact been racist on the field to Willie Rioli, which is completely fucked if that is true, and that absolutely needed to be investigated. Which in my eyes would absolutely exonerate him for any threatening text if the Bulldogs players have indeed, as Koshi said, been racist towards Willie Rioli. Then what's happened after that point is the AFL has suspended Willie Rioli for a text that he was reacting back to racist remarks from the Western Bulldogs players, which at least in my eyes justifies it, doesn't it? So I don't know how you can't investigate these issues here. I just don't understand how the AFL's suspending Willie Rioli for a text that was in response to these racist remarks. So the AFL would have suspended him without a proper investigation after he was racially vilified in this situation. So I think either way, for this to just get completely swept under the rug is just astounding, and I cannot believe it. This level of an issue and these comments from head figures at the clubs haven't been addressed by the AFL at all, and the AFL continue to be absolutely amazing at handling anything that comes their way. And honestly, I have no clue how this hasn't been the biggest story of the year. We either have a player, as I said, from a club suspended by the AFL for threatening messages in response to racism. So they've essentially, the racism in that situation would have gone unpunished, and the victim of the racial abuse was in fact sentenced for a week because he sent a mean text to him. Or we have a club president falsely claiming that the Bulldogs were racist when in fact this player may have lost his temper and sent an unprovoked text message, and to which there was no punishment for the president, in that case David KOCH. How has this not been addressed? It is completely mishandled yet again, and as I said, absolutely astounded that this was the way that this unfolded, and how it wasn't picked up by the bigger heads in the media. And we have Caroline Wilson coming out yesterday saying that there was no space for Luke Beveridge to come back and defend his players in that regard. Well, it's what was the truth? How do you know what the truth was? I don't understand how, why shouldn't he defend his players if he doesn't think that actually happened? And if it did actually happen, how is there no actual investigation and any further consequences to the Bulldogs players who were racist towards Willie Rioli? It's just a complete fuck up by the AFL yet again. And I think that the actual nature of this situation is beyond their comprehension almost, which is just wild to me. I think they're just so focused on mitigating any public response that they're not actually investigating what happened within their within their jurisdiction, I guess. So anyway, I hope everyone understands how ridiculous that whole situation is, and I can't believe it was handled the way it did. But anyway, that's sort of where I'm at with that. And I hope that this I don't know if this gets out a bit, because I just can't, as you can probably tell from my voice, I just can't really comprehend how this hasn't been a bigger issue to this point. But anyway, I guess nothing's going to happen. It never ever does. So anyway, no point worrying about it, I guess. But I thought I'd raise that issue off the top of the podcast. And let's get into the power rankings. This is what everyone wants to come and see. So let's talk about the footy again. And first on my power rankings, we have Collingwood again. They won in a close one against a pretty good offense, which is, at the moment, no one can stop this team defensively. They will just absolutely chokehold you at the moment. And, number one defense on the year by a fair margin as well. And, I think I'm a little bit interested to see how they maintain the pressure as the season progresses. Obviously much has been made of how old their list is, but they're undoubtedly the premiership favourite at the moment, the Pies, and definitely as it stands anyway right now. But the only concern I have is are they peaking a little early here, especially defensively, and whether they can keep that up, keep up the effort all year, especially with the age profile of the list. So obviously that's complete speculation. They might be able to do that the whole year, but they are playing very, very well at the moment, and probably the only team that's even coming close to them right now in terms of form are the Bulldogs. So that's where I got Collingwood at number one. Still very impressed with them, obviously. That's why they're number one on the board. Number two, I still have the Brisbane Lions. I gave them the benefit of the doubt down in Hobart against the Kangas, but there's no silver lining in this one with their loss to the D's at home at the Gabba. So, definitely a bit of a watch this space on them right now. Their clearance game has been great all year, especially from stoppages. But, on the weekend, Melbourne beat them up around the stoppages, and then again on the spread against the D's, they got beaten, post-clearance possessions, and Melbourne beat them in that category as well. So, there's a few warning signs, because it wasn't just against Melbourne, and it was to an even greater degree last week against the Kangas that, the Kangas got on top of them in the clearances as well, and in stoppage games. So that's 2 weeks in a row where the opposition has taken away their absolute bread and butter in the Lions, and albeit it is against the two best ruckmen in the league in Max Gawn and Tristan Xerri, so they obviously have a lot to say about those the stoppages and those numbers there. But that's the correlation here, is that maybe it is because of the two ruckmen, but either way they're not trending in a great direction over the last 2 weeks, and keen to see if they can get back on top against the Hawks this week in the stoppage areas of the game. So yeah, interested to see that one. The Bulldogs, we've got a big move up here from the Bulldogs. They were 6th on my board last week. They've gone up 3 spots to 3rd on my power rankings at the moment, and just an absolute demolition of the Bombers there at Marvel Stadium. And I sort of put the Darwin game into context as well. Like they obviously lost there. It was a close one up against the Gold Coast Suns, but the conditions of and how well the Gold Coast are playing Darwin, I don't think you expect anyone to beat them there at the moment. And that's I'll get into that with the Hawks as well later, but. I think that right now the Bulldogs are absolutely playing the best footy of anyone. They had that down week last week against the Suns, but it's not looking as bad now either. So I think that a lot of weight is going into how well they're playing right now, and I think the only bummer is that it got reported last week that Cody Waitman's likely to sit out the rest of the year. So that's a bit of a bummer for me, and one of my favourite small forwards in the competition, but. The good news is that Sam Darcy is reported to be only 2 to 5 weeks away, which is very exciting stuff for the team that is, playing, if not the best footy in the league, definitely top 2 footy in the league at the moment, and you get to add arguably the most influential player across the start of the season back into this team, and they had him and Bont only played 1 or 2 quarters together against the Saints, I think it was. So very exciting stuff for them. Can't wait to see the Bont delivering to him very shortly. Ed Richards absolutely dominating. He's the number 1 rated player in the competition so far this year. So as per Wheelo's rating stats, so he's absolutely on a tear at the moment. So you got him, Bont, and Libba also, all 3 of them playing absolutely amazing footy, and Adam Treloar's getting into the fold as well at the moment. Is going to be very exciting stuff when Sam Darcy returns also. But yeah, the Dogs are a little bit like this though. They're going to show glimpses of dominance, and then they might go through a bit of a lull. So interested to see if they can show a bit more consistency this season and prove that they are one of the absolute best teams from start to finish. We have the Hawks. I've dropped them down a spot. They had I would say an honourable loss to the Suns on the weekend, and similar to what I was saying with the Dogs, I wasn't super mad that they lost up in Darwin. They had chances to win it, but yeah, definitely Gold Coast were too good in the end. And for me, it is a little bit concerning that they haven't really been able to beat anyone in big games yet. They've lost to Port Adelaide, Geelong, and Gold Coast in what were their 3 biggest games of the year, and as I said, all 3 resulted in losses. So. They haven't really shown that they have a top gear to beat those teams when it matters at the moment, so it's a little bit concerning from my point of view. Few positives, Dylan Moore is finding a bit more form after the last couple of weeks, especially his stoppage work. He's been one of the better clearance players for the Hawks, so yeah, just I think it's a good move to be able to play him through there a bit more and get him into the game. John Newcomb has been unbelievable this year. He's carrying a ridiculous load inside at the moment without Will Day and, inconsistent players around him in terms of injuries and things like that. So he hasn't had too many people play in the middle alongside him throughout the whole season. You've had Warple miss time, Cam McKenzie's missed time, Connor Nash, of course, as well. Will Day is out. So, John Newcomb has been the one consistent player through the middle. Even Meek missed on the weekend, so you can't even say their ruckman's been consistent for him, which, I can't praise John Newcomb's season enough at this point. He's been very, very good for the Hawks. And then, lastly, it wouldn't be a Hawk segment without me shouting out the Wiz. And he showed exactly why I am so high on him. He absolutely carried Hawthorn through the first half there. He, just everything that came his way, he made something happen and kicked 3 goals in the first half. Very, very hard goals as well, and for such a little guy, he's so good one-on-one. You definitely don't want to be one out with him in near the goal square, because he might make you look a bit silly. 4th on my board, we have the Geelong Cats, and 5th. They've dropped a spot for me, so yeah, they just absolutely cooked Port Adelaide, didn't they? And Jeremy Cameron kicking 7 goals, finding his form again, and now I think he's 4th in the Coleman, so he's slowly climbing there. And Ollie Dempsey as well, how they found him where they did in the rookie draft is crazy to me. He's the best winger in the game for mine. It's not particularly close either. He's doing it all. He's hitting the scoreboard immensely at the moment. He's tied first with Zach Bailey for goals from the midfield this year. So, both wingers, but yeah, both definitely doing a lot of damage on the scoreboard as well, which, you'd love to see from your midfield players and especially from a winger. Very, very good year from Ollie Dempsey so far. Dangerfield got injured on the weekend. He did a hammy, so he's only expected to miss 1 or 2 weeks. But if I was the Cats, one, I'd hold him out a bit longer, get him refreshed, given how how ballistic his play style has been to start the year, and couldn't hurt to leave him out. They've cemented themselves as one of the better teams already this year. I don't think they're in doubt of missing finals, so give him a little bit of a mid-season break, I think, especially leading into the buys. But yeah, one concern for me is it'd be good to see if they can get a bit more out of Shannon Neal in the meantime while Dangerfield's out. Obviously, it's going to be hard if Jeremy Cameron's kicking 7 each week, but Shannon Neal has kicked 8 goals from 10 games as a power forward, or key forward. So not great for his second tall, but his closest comparisons on the season are around his stats, and it came out as similar to Max Hall, the half forward flanker from St Kilda, Braden Campbell, and Mason Wood. So he's definitely comparing more to those half forward, high half forward types. So isn't exactly performing like a key forward right now. I'm not sure if that's. I can't imagine that's a role he's playing. He would have more similarity in contested marks and things like that. If he was performing similar to a key forward, but just one to watch for me at the moment. They obviously invested quite a bit in him last year with the Tom Hawkins injury, and gave him those minutes and games to get him into the shape to perform this year. And I think he's probably been one of the most disappointing players for Geelong this year. He hasn't been as influential as they probably expected coming into the season. And I think. He has the ability to play second ruck, which is definitely valuable at times, but you want a bit more from him overall, I think. Coming in at 6, we have the Gold Coast Suns. They've moved up 2 spots for me from 8th, and I still want to see how they go outside of Darwin. There don't be more games there this year, but being 8-0 there over the last 8 games is pretty incredible, and to topple both the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn up there in back-to-back weeks is just sort of solidifying, for me at least, how I do think they're a finals chance now, and most likely to make it. I was, as listeners would know, I wasn't sold a few weeks ago, but they've definitely sold me now, and they have some serious X-factor players. I think they've got Bailey Humphrey up forward and through the middle. He's amazing. He don't see many guys capable of kicking the goals like he can, and also be a force of stoppage the same way he is at the moment. And Ben Long is the other one. He's just having an amazing year for them. I definitely wouldn't have seen this coming from him. I watched him a fair bit when he was at the Saints, but his sort of improvement has just been really just come out of nowhere. And credit to him, he's playing as well as any small forward in the competition. And he's seriously hard matchup at the moment. He's one of those guys. I spoke about it last week with Jamie Elliott, who interestingly is Ben Long's closest statistical comparison on the year. But he's too fast for big guys. He's too strong in the air and the contest for smalls, and that's just making it for a really, really tough matchup when you've already got probably the one of the best key forwards in the competition up there with Ben King, of course, leading the Coleman at the moment with having played a game less than everyone. So little shout out to Ben King for the bit quiet on that front, given that he is the Coleman leader. But pretty incredible stuff from the Gold Coast forward line at the moment. I'm loving what I'm seeing down there. And speaking of good forward lines, the Adelaide Crows, they've stayed 7th for me this year. I think similar to Hawthorn, they haven't been able to perform in matches this year that matter, outside of the showdown, of course, where they did beat Port Adelaide, which, Port Adelaide aren't a great team at the moment, so, that's probably a bit, definitely would have got up for the showdown, so you got to count that, but outside of that, they haven't been able to beat teams that are, good around them. They lost to Geelong, they lost to Gold Coast, they lost to Collingwood on the weekend, so I think there's a few warning signs at least for Adelaide, and I still love the blend of players that they have, but I do think it's time to at least tinker with how they will go without Tex Walker in particular. And I spoke about how taking one of those key forwards away might have an adverse effect on your offense, like that you might drop a little bit in that category or that part of your game, but I think that you know what you have in the bag with the current forward setup that you have, right? Like you can always revert to that if it does look shit the other way and you bring in a small. But like you might say, oh, if Tex isn't there, then and Phil Thorpe's in the ruck, then who's up forward? Well, they still have Daniel Curtin as well, who can pinch hit as a absolute key forward at times, and of course Darcy Fogarty as well. So it's not like you're exactly strapped for cash when it comes to key forwards. So I think that it's worth playing around with and just seeing what you have for a couple of weeks. Bring in another small, bring in another midfielder, whatever you need to do to just get a bit more pressure on the ball, exiting your forward half, and just see how it goes. And as I said, if it doesn't work, just go back to the offense and lean into having the big boys up forward, because it's gotten you to 7th on the ladder anyway. So I think you're not in a bad position at all. But yeah, the other concern I have for them is like whether we've gone a bit early on Josh Rochelle. I think that he in comparison to his year last year, he's definitely been better. I've got to give him that. But I think that like first game where he came out and kicked, was it 4 goals and had 20 touches or whatever, he's like sort of set the tone for his year. But I don't think he's really backed that up necessarily. And he's kicking goals at a good rate. He's averaging 1.7 goals a game, but he's only at 13 touches a game on the year. And I think for someone that you want a bit more out of that player. They've invested a high draft pick in him. Like Isaac Rankin's obviously spending a lot more time in the midfield. You want that dangerous high half forward to be able to get the prototypical Brent Daniels, like Dylan Moore, like 20 touches, 2 goals sort of guy. And even if it's not 20 touches, I don't think he's necessarily going to be that. But 13 feels very low for a guy of his talent. And I'd want him getting the ball a little bit more than he is at the moment. The GWS Giants, they've dropped 3 spots for me. They're 8th in my power rankings at the moment, and it's just not working for them at the moment. It feels a little bit similar to last year, their form. They start pretty strong, and then everyone's like, oh, look at the Giants, and then they sort of go into this little plateau, and then at the back end of the year, everyone's like, oh, the Giants, they might win the flag. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's going to follow that same path again, but on the weekend they got comprehensively beaten by the Dockers. It wasn't as close as the scoreline said, like 28 points I think it was. So yeah, the game was definitely in the Dockers' control. And Finn Callahan dislocating his shoulder. He's going to miss a little bit of time, which is not great. Dislocations, obviously, you can play through the season with, but we do see it all the time that players are just not quite the same when they do try and play through it, especially in their contest. And someone who's playing inside mid predominantly might struggle a little bit this year, I think, going forward. And maybe we expect him to play a bit more on the wing when he does return, like to help preserve his shoulder. But yeah, I think the big in will be Stephen Cornelio, and if he can find some form, then he's going to help inside, of course, which maybe allows Finn Callahan to play a bit more outside. But then obviously losing Finn Callahan on the inside, which isn't great. But the other one is Brent Daniels. Like I think he's 3 weeks away now, so that might coincide with them finding a bit better form, because I still believe in the talent on this list, and hopefully they can pull it together once they get a bit healthier with their star players. Freo Dockers, they're coming in at 9th for me this year. This week, sorry, they've gone up 1 spot from last week, and they finally got a travel win, which can be few and far between for Freo. At times, I think Luke Jackson definitely showed he is the number 1 ruck at the club at the moment. And yeah, really excited to see how mobile the midfield is with him in there consistently. I think he really adds some size and mobility with Hayden Young out, of course. And, Brayshaw and Sarong are quite a bit on the smaller side, I think. So yeah, his presence definitely brings, the presence that he brings is super valuable. Obviously Sean Darcy is a massive guy, but he just does nothing outside of the stoppage ruck work. So having Luke Jackson as being able to play in the ruck full time, but also giving them the support at ground level and being a big body around the contest is going to be I think going to be really, really good for the Dockers midfield, week in, week out. And speaking of people who bring presence, Patrick Voss, he's not playing amazing by any means, but I feel like his presence in when he's on the ground, you can definitely feel him. Plays with a level of intensity that not many guys in the league play with, I don't think, and he's one of the best celebrators as well. So if you tune into a Freo game, Patrick Voss is a fun player to watch at the moment. And Shea Bolton as well, having an absolute pearler of a year. I was a little concerned at the amount that they paid to get him. I didn't know whether he was a bit more of a downhill skier of sorts, but I think we're starting to realise that, he may not be the guy to lift you out of a hole, but once the team is absolutely running, he is going to make you 10 times better as well. And he's what I would call definitely a ceiling raiser. And the AFL, I think, in the AFL, he's one of those players that is just, if he's on a good team, he just makes them an elite team. So yeah, I'm very impressed with what Shea Bolton's done so far this year. And he would be having an even better year if he could kick straight in front of goal, because he's only going at 39% shots on goal at the moment. So, if he increased that a little bit, then yeah, we could be looking at another All-Australian season for Shea Bolton. And the closest statistical comparison on the year, interestingly enough, is Caleb Sarong for him. So yeah, playing a lot through the middle at the moment, and obviously having an impact on the scoreboard too, which you love to see. And yeah, always a good watch when Shea Bolton's up and about. The Swans, they are 10th for me. They've gone up a spot, obviously, after their win against Carlton. They've actually switched places with Carlton for me on my power rankings, and I'll get to the Blues in a second. But yeah, on the Swans, then they're still not convincing me that the ceiling is very high at the moment, but at least their stars are playing extremely well, and they are unfortunately doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them. They're just not getting a lot of help outside of their star players, and they just have nothing to really help with them, and I fear that lack of depth is actually going to cost them, at least in the near future, and obviously towards the end of the season, if they can't keep getting wins on the board while they've got a lot of injuries, then they're going to be out of the chase. But there is, I will concede that there is a chance that they get Logan McDonald back, who's going to help with their forward structure, of course, and then Tom Papley as well has missed a lot of footy. Errol Goulden, of course, who had the fractured ankle at the start of the year, and if those three in particular come back and things are able to fall into place a bit more, then I think there is a chance they find some form and go on a bit of a run when that happens. But I guess the question is, will that be too late, and or will Warner and Heaney be a little bit too gassed to keep that form up at the moment? And just for context, Chad Warner is the 10th rated player in the competition at the moment, and Isaac Heaney is the 16th rated player in the competition at the moment. So both of those guys playing really, really good footy, but yeah, just not getting a whole heap of help outside of them at the moment. My frustration with the Blues continues, and that's why I moved them back down this week. They've gone back down to 11th for me, so from 10th to 11th, and this team is just crying out for some ball movers, and unfortunately, Jordan Boyd got concussed on the weekend. And first of all, A, I have no idea why he hasn't been playing, and B, was the sub in this one. But yeah, unfortunately, he got concussed because he's someone who is both capable of being a good defender and a good ball user. So I just think that that sort of leads me into my next point. Vossi is just having some really questionable coaching decisions at the moment, and it's not just this one that I'll say at the top, but Boyd, even when he did come on as sub, was put up forward. So is he playing a defensive forward role? If so, on who? Nick Blakey is not attacking as much as he has been, and I think it just shows that Vossi doesn't really understand the strength of the players that he has right now. And we have a very large sample. We're 10 rounds into the year, or 11 including opening round, of them being a poor disposal team. They're second last in kicking efficiency, and while they kick the fourth most out of any team in the competition at the moment, in terms of their proportion of disposals, that is, and that's just sort of exaggerates the issue, doesn't it? They're kicking it a heap and kicking it really shit. So that's how I'll sum that up. But yeah, and they're fourth last in handball efficiency as well. So they're not good at using the ball by foot or hand. They're actually really good at preventing teams from entering inside 50. They have the second least in the league for inside 50s against, but they're their second worst at rebound 50 rate. So they're unable to, once it does go in there, there's just no getting it out for them. And I think that speaks to their inability to use the ball and transition from one end to the other. And I think that it is time that Voss realises the nature of the players that he's working with, and they are unable to use the ball at all, or they're not able to do so within the game plan as it's structured right now. So regardless, it's apparent that we have a large enough sample, and it's not working either way right now. So I don't really have a great solution for them, because if the team, they've shown they aren't able to use the ball at all right now, they need to do a lot out of the 50-50 contests, and win most of those to have any sort of chance of being a consistent winner. I think that right now their only real path to success would be to continue to lean into their sort of clearance domination, which they clearly have with Cripps, and they have good ruckman as well. Tom De Koning is good, and Pitto is actually a good backup as well. So lean into the clearance domination, take as much territory as they can, and just lock it in your forward half and give yourself as many repeat entries as possible to take a contested mark or a bit of a crumbing goal, I guess. But that's definitely not sustainable either, because like you're playing against teams who are able to transition the ball from one end to the other. So it's harder than ever to lock the ball inside your forward 50, which is why, that game style is not going to work. But I think it's just with the personnel that they have at the moment and their inability to take it from one end to the other, I don't think they really have another option at the moment. And it's sort of like, of course, an outdated sort of game plan if you're going down that route of like just win the clearance and territory and then hope that, Harry, Charlie, etc. can just make something happen. But, unless they are able to magically use the ball better, they don't really have a better option to save their season, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that the Blues are going to have to lean into that clearance game and, not take those risks that they have been taking, kicking the ball, like if they are at all. You just need to be very, very conservative when you're moving the ball. And, once you get those clearances out of the middle, just take as much territory as you can and live with the results, so to speak, because once it's going the other way at the moment, they're just like, they can't get it out themselves. So, just do what you can to keep it out of your D50 at the moment, because you're certainly no chance of winning once it gets there if you're the Blues. Melbourne, they have bumped up 3 spots for me on the weekend. Yeah, that's a great win against the Lions. That's undeniable, and they're 12th on my power rankings now. And if you bet a contender, then you're going to jump the 3 teams that got absolutely embarrassed on the weekend ahead of you in my power rankings. So, with that being said, I'm still not an absolute believer, but they have been a lot better the last few weeks. I have to admit that. And, Gawn is absolutely dominating the ruck. He just did not allow Brisbane to exit D50 on the weekend when they needed to transition late in the game. And, I'm really impressed with Bax Gawn. I didn't write him off, but I thought he might be on a little bit of a downslide, but he's proven that I think he is still the best ruckman in the game, which I didn't think that would be the case early on, but, he's absolutely been that after through the first 10 rounds of the year. I don't think that's even a question at the moment. And, I rate that they dropped Jacob Van Rooyen. He was clearly not getting it done, and the mix-up forward looks a lot better because of it. They brought in Melksham, they have Spargo, Sparrow, and Cozzy Pickett. That's 4 guys who are, pretty proven half forwards. Like, albeit outside of Cozzy, they're not elite, but there's 4 guys there who are like great runners and can make things happen forward to centre. And then I like Daniel Turner a lot, and Harry Petty as well is a lot better choice than Jacob Van Rooyen as well at the moment. And I just think it's a better mix, and I don't think they are going to be able to score enough consistently to capitalise on sort of the clearance domination that they do get. But overall, it's a better mix for mine, and it's a much more functional forward line with, guys who can play multiple roles through the middle as well. Like all those guys, maybe not Sparrow and Melksham as much, but but even Melksham has a role to play. He can play as a defensive forward, which we saw at times on the weekend against Harris Andrews. So, there's roles that these guys can play, whereas Jacob Van Rooyen is just providing you nothing at the moment. So I think that, it's definitely looking a little bit better for Melbourne at the moment for me. Essendon, definitely they've dropped a spot for me after that loss. They were 12th. They've gone down to 13th for me on the power rankings, and not the loss I saw coming for them, but every team going through a rebuild is going to have a couple of these a year probably, and I think it was a tough matchup for them. The Dogs just dominating the Essendon mids. Zach Merritt had his worst game for the year, and it's probably not a surprise they got beaten if that happens to Zach Merritt, but I don't think anyone would have expected it to happen like that. The game was over at quarter time and definitely by half time, but if you're Essendon, this is just one that you've got to forget and try bounce back from. You've got Richmond at Dreamtime in the G this Friday, one of the most anticipated games of the year. So I think that you realise that against the Dogs, that's the level you have to get to eventually, and you don't want it. You want to minimise how many times that happens to you as a rebuilding side as the season goes on. So just hoping for a bit more consistency from the Dons, and hopefully they don't have their second half of the year drop off again like they did last year. So good. Not too much on them, and not too much on this next team either. And Port Adelaide, they got comprehensively beaten yet again, and they're 14th on my power rankings now. They've dropped a couple spots, and it's gonna take a lot to turn this around. They don't have their first round pick this year either, which getting a little bit concerned with that. Jason Horne-Francis is out for a month, so that just sort of compounds that issue. And like, where's the talent coming from if you're Port Adelaide? And there are 1 or 2 teams in Adelaide if there's any, talent trying to come back home. But if you're a player from South Australia, like, which team are you picking right now? Like, you can't seriously be thinking you want to go to Port Adelaide over Adelaide, unless you supported them growing up. So, I think the allure of Port Adelaide is definitely falling at the moment. Zach Butters, of course, the questions are whether he's going to remain at the club or not. So, things are things are not looking great for Port Adelaide right now, and interested to see how things go. St Kilda, they dropped a spot for me as well. They're 15th now in the power rankings, and just too many passengers in this one. Of course, one team is eventually going to lose to West Coast, and I did say to my old man, he's a Saints fan, and I said at the start of the I think it was a couple of days before, I said, I bet you the Saints will be the first team to lose to them, and of course they were, and they're, as I said, they've just got too many passengers that don't perform consistently enough to help their stars out when the stars are not playing at their absolute best either, and, things are getting worse. Jack McRae couldn't even fly back from Perth, he's got a back injury. Nazar Wanganeen-Malera clearly got hurt after a big fall in this one as well, and was largely, inefficient after that happened, and a bit of a disaster this one for the Saints, really. I think that it's showing that the few guys are playing a bit above their heads, and maybe some of the guys they think are sort of coming on aren't coming on as well as they thought. Like Marcus Windhager, I was pretty high on his contested ability, but he's not much more. Like he's at best like a tagger, and a poor man's Jack Steele, and Jack Steele's not playing well either. Like there's just a lot of just average players in this team right now, unfortunately for the Saints. And, I think they just need to do what they can to increase the overall talent pool in this group. And, I've spoken a little bit about the tank, but I think it's time to lean into it. Because not only that, but also just give some of the young guys a bit more time. I've liked what I've seen from Garcia at times this year. Toby Travalia, please play more. I don't know whether he's incapable of playing a full game at the moment, but he's been the sub in back-to-back weeks now, and I think that he's showed a lot more than some other players have at this point, and they invested a top pick in him, so I'm very excited to see him play. And of course, when Alex Taru gets back from suspension, I hope he gets some time to develop in the senior team. And Mateus Philippou as well, really showing some signs. I think he's on the way back from his injury, second game back this week, so I really like what I've seen from him, which is a good thing for the Saints. He's pretty tough in traffic. He had a lovely across-the-body inside 50 to Jack Higgins that resulted in a goal where, in previous years he's been a bit of a selfish player, and I would probably expected him to just take a ping from outside 50, but he identified Higgins in a great position and made a really tough kick. So, really impressed with him. And I just think, there's something there with Philippou. The fact that, he makes mistakes are often... The mistakes he makes are often him biting a bit more off than he can chew, so you'd rather see that than someone who's a bit scared to do those sort of things. At least he's trying things out there, and he just needs to keep working and developing, and I think that they've got another one there in Philippou that's going to be a really solid player for years to come. North, they stayed where they are, the 16th for me on my power rankings, and would have been... a disappointing one to lose on multiple fronts if they had have lost this one. But, they'd shown how competitive they've been the last few weeks. And, I think if they did end up losing this one, it would have sort of put them back a few steps in their development, in my opinion. But, as well as dropping a game that would have improved their draft pick, which Richmond owned. So, definitely an important one for them to win. And they proved that they were the better team on the day, and that they are capable of closing close games, which the last 4 weeks have been really close for them, and I think all four have been within a goal or two. So I think an important one for them to win for their confidence in late game situations. And Cam Zurha, gave him a bit of a spray. He's playing a lot better as of late as well. I think it coincides definitely with Paul Curtis being out, so. Let's see how engaged Cam Zurha is when he goes back down the rung of in terms of offensive targets. But I think he's definitely found his form, which is a good thing for North fans to see him playing well again. He's definitely a fan favourite, no doubt. Richmond, as I said, would have been a good one for them to win, given that they have the first round pick for North. But they had moments to win the game, but weren't able to do it. And I think one player I'm going to talk about is Tom Lynch here. His drop off is pretty crazy. He's like an actively bad player right now. There was a stat came up on the weekend during that game that he hasn't kicked more than 3 goals since the back end of 2023, which I can't remember which round it was exactly, but I know he's been injured a bit, but not even a 4-goal game in the last 2 years is not even kick 4 goals this year for a guy who. Many considered to be the heir apparent to the club great Jack Riewoldt, of course, is pretty disappointing no matter how you look at it. It's not like it's impossible to perform well in this team right now. Like, they have guys like, Vlosten, Nathan Broad playing really, really good footy. Seth Campbell, of course, is arguably in all-Australian form, and Tim Taranto as well is playing really well this year in the middle. So, there's no reason that Tom Lynch as well couldn't be playing decent as well, given how much he's being paid. So I think he deserves a bit of a clip with his form at the moment, and maybe he's just done and like he isn't that player anymore, which could be the case. But again, that's when you're getting paid that much, you're gonna cop some criticism, I think. And for a key forward to not have kicked more than 3 goals since the back end of 2023 is worthy of some criticism, I think. So yeah, not great by him. West Coast, last but not least, finally. So they finally got a win. Good to see them get on the board, and I think the main thing in this one is that they definitely brought the effort this week, which is something we just have not seen, and they showed they are capable of playing, solid footy, and when they've got something to play for. And I think no doubt they would have been all a bit fired up from the Adam Selwood the horrible news about that, and that got them emotionally charged, I think, potentially, and good on them. They used something really horrible that happened and put out a great performance that I'm sure that many West Coast fans would be proud of. And I think in this one you can start to see the outline of some structure in this team, and some quality of players. Like, as I said, they really brought the effort this week, and I think you're starting to see some keepers from within this group, which maybe you wouldn't have been able to see 4 or 5 weeks ago. And Ryan Marich, I've spoken about a little bit. Brady Hoff was another one. Elijah Hewitt. Sorry, I've spoken ad nauseum about Ruben Ginbey, but Tyler Brockman as well showed a fair bit on the weekend. I liked their usage of him through the middle when they needed some run. So yeah, I think that things are coming together a little bit for West Coast. I don't think that they're by any means they've got the guys. Like, they still need to get going back to the draft and bringing in more talent, but there's at least some players there that you're looking at, like, okay, maybe they're going to be a part of the next good West Coast team, which maybe you wouldn't have been able to say a few weeks ago. And I think what this game showed is that it is absolutely a matter of effort for some of these guys, and just letting them actually develop within a team that's trying week to week. And they're all AFL listed players at the end of the day. They have the talent. It's just about putting themselves in positions to succeed. And when you don't bring effort, that's not going to happen. So hopefully this week's something that they can sort of highlight and be like, look what happens when we try. So good for them. That's it for the power rankings, guys, and we'll finish off today with the Secret Star Society inductee for round 10, and there wasn't one West Coast Eagle player that I omitted from the group of young guys that showed a bit on the weekend and over the course of the season, I think, in his case, but it's not Ruben Ginbey, of course, surprise, who I do love, but he's already been nominated once or twice, I think, for this segment. Probably I could have made it a third time because I just love him. But we're going with Harry Edwards. He's a big 200-centimetre key back. He's 24 years old, so he has taken a little bit longer to come on for the Eagles. But on the year so far, he's showing things that you really want to see from a key back. He's obviously got the size, but he's ranked elite in the competition for spoils, which is ideal for a key back. He can kick the ball. He's not turning it over. So not that you need someone who's an amazing kick as a key back, but you just want him to handball it off most of the time. But he's doing really well in that regard as well. But yeah, just watching him on the weekend, I feel like he has the size and confidence in his ability right now, and I think that he's going to emerge as the season goes on as one of the better young key backs in the league. And as I said, he really catches your eye with his size and especially the mobility at that size as well. Like, he's not of course, someone who's heavy and 200 centimeters is going to be lumbering a bit around, but not as much as you think for someone that big. And he's not like a Harris Andrews spindly 200 centimeters, but he's a big dude. And you definitely can. There's definitely something there with him, and someone with that size and mobility don't grow on trees, especially ones that hustle like he does. I mentioned the spoils, but he's also number 3 in the whole competition for 1%ers. So something you really like to see. And just to close it out, I ran his stats on the season. His statistical comparisons are most closely matched to Jack Payne from the Lions, of course, a massive key back who actually is a good comparison for him, and Harry Petty as well. So, interesting one for them. Harry Edwards for the West Coast Eagles, big key back for them. So very excited to see how he goes for the rest of the year. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.